All right, so everybody has joined today to learn about the ECNCCP Coach Certification Pathways. We're going to be looking at who your athletes are, understanding how those athletes fit into the different contexts of coach certification, which certification context is right for you as a coach, what training you can be doing now, what prerequisites you might need to do to complete or to be evaluated, and what are the steps to an evaluation. And as we go through this, remember that one designation isn't better than another. The best thing to do with the coaching program is get certified for the context in which you're working or you want to be working. So the ECNCCP certification was developed in partnership with our provincial territorial sport organizations, our PTSOs, and it's really dedicated to providing coaches and instructors with the necessary tools to make the equestrian experience safe and enjoyable for all participants, horse and human, and to develop excellence in horsemanship. The ECNCCP coaching program is the only Canadian equestrian coach and instructor certifying program recognized nationally and internationally, and it's developed in partnership with the National Coaching Certification Program, or the NCCP, who certify coaches in 65 different sports across Canada, the Coaching Association of Canada, and Sport Canada. So the first thing we're going to do is look at who your athletes are. We've got to know who our athletes are in order to understand where we fit as a coach. Hang on. So we're going to look a little bit into the long-term equestrian development model that Equestrian Canada has developed in cooperation with Sport for Life Canada. So every sport across Canada has worked with Sport for Life to determine what's the best pathway for an athlete through a sport to develop those grassroots, living in the sport, loving the sport forever athletes, and those athletes all the way up to those high-performance athletes. The long-term equestrian development plan is not only about building successful high-performance athletes, but also about ensuring the highest quality riding experience for every person who engages in equestrian sport, including those riders with disabilities. We're going to talk about stages of development, not chronological ages. I have included some baseline chronological ages so you can get a feel for where your students fit, but they are just suggestions and they're not hard rules for what age people will fit. You have to think about what skills are being developed. The long-term equestrian development model is a framework for developmentally appropriate training, recovery, and competition. So through every stage, we look at how much they could be doing, should be doing, will be doing, what their learning is, and where they fit within our equestrian model. So we're going to start with the first group that Equestrian Canada really deals with, the fundamentals athletes. And as we go through this, if this is new information for you or if you're seeing slides that represent the demographic that you're working with, just keep track of either the color or the development stage of each of the athletes, so that when we come back to looking at the different coaching contexts, you can remember which context of student you're working with, and it'll make that matching a little bit easier later on. So if you've got fundamental students, those are those 6 to 9-year-olds, and really before 6, those are our active start students who are creating positive relationships around horses, but not necessarily actually learning to ride. They're just learning to interact in the environment. We really start seeing kids engage in equestrian sport in that fundamental 6 to 9 years of age, where they're having their first exposure to equestrian activities, having fun with horses while learning with their peers, developing some fundamental movement skills, some emotional control, learning to have a positive attitude toward new challenges, developing familiarity with and respect for equine behavior, learning some responsibility rules and etiquette for handling and being around horses. During the active start stage, they're exposed to, and they should be learning respect for animals, and they'll hopefully have their first safe exposure to horses. Activity with horses at this stage is generally not discipline specific. This is the age when kids say, I want to ride a horse. They don't understand English or Western or drive or vault. They just want to get on a horse, or they want to pet a horse, or they want to be around horses. Young equestrians are always excited to be around horses for the first time, so exposure at the fundamental stage should be well structured and positive and should encourage kids to have fun. So participants in this stage are engaged in rookie riders, learn to ride levels 1 and 2, or petit show type programs. So those are our fundamentals athletes. Our next group of athletes are learn to train athletes, those 8 to 12-year-olds. At this stage, riders are starting to develop foundational riding skills in multiple disciplines. They're being introduced to fun local competitions, participating in other sports. It's important to support multi-sport, diverse life experiences while continuing to inspire increased commitment to equestrian activities, starting to introduce a little bit of specialization in this sport. And they're further developing and consolidating those basic equestrian skills, their aids and their position that were introduced in that fundamental stage. Coaches are starting to introduce independent decision-making to these athletes. They're introducing some mental training like visualization and relaxation. These students are probably riding 2 times a week. They're competing in-house competitions, maybe going to some PTSO-sanctioned competitions. These are our Learn to Ride English levels 3 and 4 and our Western levels 2 and 3. So that's our Learn to Train athletes. Our next set of athletes are our Train to Train 11 to 15, and again, it's developmental rather than chronological. At this stage, riders are starting to focus on 2 complementary disciplines. They've decided to be focused in English now, or focused in Western, or focused in drive. Still may not have committed to one stream specifically. They're developing more of those physical capacities and skills of an equestrian athlete. They're continuing their skill improvement and their understanding of horse behavior. And they're training for competition through realistic competition situations in lessons, in small in-house activities. At this stage, participants are learning to cope with the physical and mental challenges of competition and develop further mental skills. These athletes are starting to think about their ultimate goal in equestrian sport, and they'll start thinking about choosing to continue on an excellence pathway or move to that active for life pathway through equestrian sport. And we will look at those pathways in a little bit. These athletes are probably riding 3 times a week. They're competing at PTSO and possibly NSO-sanctioned competitions. They're riding at Learn to Ride English 5 and 6, Western Level 4 and Intermediate, or they've worked their way through the Learn to Drive program. So those are our Train to Train athletes. Our Learn to Compete is our next phase in the long-term equestrian development model. At this stage, riders are starting to select one primary discipline that they're focusing in. They're developing their competition skills, putting greater emphasis on physical and psychological preparation and horse management. So these are participants that are competing on a regular basis at provincial, territorial, and regional levels. They're consolidating their skills, and athletes with talent and drive who have access to horses that match their skills are now ready to begin specialized training. Their goal is the accuracy of performance, developing the ability to train and work with their horses, self-monitoring between lessons, and acquiring the physical and mental skills needed to perform effectively at an intermediate level. The Learn to Compete athletes are probably riding 5 times a week. They're competing at PTSO and NSO junior and young rider sanctioned competitions. There are Learn to Ride English Level 7 and 8, or they're part of a PTSO athlete development program. So that's our Learn to Compete. There's a lot of levels, so I hope you guys have been writing down which ones apply to your students. The next level is our Train to Compete athletes, those 16 to 21-year-old riders who are developing the ability to ride multiple horses at a competitive level. They're demonstrating a greater responsibility for horse preparation for competition and managing some travel and environment issues with their horses. This stage of an equestrian is a confident, effective athlete with a sound understanding of key performance factors associated with their specific discipline. They're showing some knowledge and have experienced training horses capable of competing at national and international levels. They're adapting to a variety of horses at various levels of schooling to produce the best performances from them. They're able to identify problems, discuss these problems, and develop and execute plans to resolve or improve the situation. These athletes are riding 6 times a week, competing at national and international competitions and championships. They're learned to ride English levels 9 and 10, or they're in a PTSO athlete development program. Those are our trained to compete athletes. And if you haven't seen your athletes yet, don't worry, there's a few more. So our Learn to Win athletes in that 19 to 25 years of age, and that Train to Win athletes in that 23 years of age and more sort of fit together pretty well. At the Learn to Win stage, riders are starting to be able to ride multiple horses in competition on demand under pressure, travel internationally, demonstrate world-class riding skills, and be long-listed athletes. The Learn to Win athlete is really consolidating and refining their equestrian repertoire of skills. They're developing consistent skill execution and performance and optimizing that performance with the goal of consistently placing at the top. These riders are elite riders who are on the CET long list with aspirations to make the CET short list national team. During the next Olympic or Paralympic quadrennial, these riders will be competing on the world stage. They're riding 30 to 90 minutes per day per horse, competing nationally at FEI competition in North America and at national championships, and they're part of the National Athlete Development Program. Our Train to Win athletes, which is our final stage of competitive athlete, is riders are starting to be able to peak for major competitions, show quality riding skills supported by exceptional fitness, psychological readiness, and an integrated support team. They're refining and maintaining all the skills and tactical strategies while ensuring they're tailored to the strengths of both the equestrian and their horse. They're fully committed at this stage to international excellence. This rider's optimizing and integrating all performance factors for specific international competitions to achieve a podium performance. These elite riders are competing on the world stage, shortlisted for teams competing at the World Equestrian Games, Olympics or Paralympics, and Pan American or Para-Pan American Games. They're riding 30 to 90 minutes per day per horse. For competition, they are shortlisted athletes competing at major games, Olympic and Paralympic, World Equestrian Games, et cetera, et cetera. They're competing FEI internationally, and they're part of our National Athlete Development Program. If your athletes didn't fit into those, there are 2 more stages of athlete that we work with. There are active for life and competitive for life athletes. Riders can enter these stages at any age after learning to ride to meet their personal riding, health, fitness, or social needs. So this is probably a group that a lot of us have students in, either active for life or competitive for life. Active for life students are equestrians who continue to ride, drive, vault for enjoyment, personal growth, or social engagement, but have goals other than competition. These individuals are active for life. They're riding as many times a week as they want to ride. They're competing at whatever level they want to compete or whatever type of competition they are feeling comfortable to compete, and they are learning to they're not competing. They are engaging in the Learn to Ride program at levels that are appropriate for them. The competitive life for life athletes are those equestrians who enjoy competition but who aren't on the excellence pathway and are not training at the highest elite level. Their focus is developing skills and achieving personal bests while attending competition. So they're interested in competition not for the purpose of following the excellence pathway, but for the purpose of engaging in social competition for the enjoyment. They're also riding as frequently or infrequently as they want and competing at the level of competition that works for them personally, socially, and financially. So, did you see your athletes in that long-term equestrian development model? Hopefully you did. Hopefully you've identified 1, 2, 3, several bars that met what your athletes felt like to you. So once you know all of that, and if you're interested in looking further into the long-term equestrian development model, there's a lot more information on the EC website. There is a full manual that includes all of the stages and lots more information about the development that's happening at every stage, and information for coaches, information for parents to understand how those athletes should be working, what should be expected, what the progression should be. So you can head over to the website after the presentation and download the LTED manual. It is free. So next we're going to look at the different coach contexts that Equestrian Canada offers. We currently have 4 different streams or pathways for coach certification based on the NCCP coach certification model. So our first coach certification pathway is our instructor pathway. We call it instructor. NCCP calls it instruction of beginners. And these are really coaches who are working with beginner or intermediate students. Beginners are those participants of all ages with little or no sport experience, and they're being taught basic sport skills. Our intermediate performers are participants who already have some experience and proficiency in the sport and are taught to refine basic skills and introduced to more complex techniques. Our instructor certification is not a competition certification. So if you're looking to coach athletes in a school and not taking them to competition necessarily, or focusing on the pieces of their progress and their development that require you to understand that competition structure, then instructor is the right place for you. Our next group of coaches that we recognize we've got our competition coach, which in NCCP language is competition introduction. Competition coaches are coaching those sport participants who are learning basic skills and athletic abilities in a fun and safe environment and are typically prepared for local or regional level competitions. So they're introducing them to competition while teaching them those basic foundational skills. We've got a second level of competition introduction coach called competition coach specialist. These coaches are working with participants who already have some experience and proficiency in the sport and are taught to refine those basic skills and be introduced to more complex techniques. They're typically preparing them for provincial and national level competitions. So the competition coach and competition coach specialist are both in that competition introduction stream of NCCP coaches. The competition coach specialist looks further into the more complex skills and techniques of bringing athletes to competition. And then we've got our development coaches. So our high performance 1, we call it. In NCCP terminology, it's comp dev, or competition development coaches. Those coaches are developing athletes that are refining those basic sport skills and developing more advanced skills and tactics. They're generally preparing for performance at provincial or national level championship competitions. So those are really the coaches that are looking to take kids to young riders, take kids to the Royal, take kids to more national championship level type competitions, introducing them to the FEI levels and the international levels of sport. So which context are you? If your athletes were in those first 3 groups, the fundamentals, active for life, and learn to train. So active for life were those non-competitive, getting into the sport maybe a bit later in life because they want the social side of the sport, and then learn to train, then you should be certified as an instructor. If your athletes were in the learn to train, train to train, learn to compete, or active for life, competitive for life, you're probably in the competition coach or competition coach specialist, whether you're at the early end of that range or farther down that range in development of the athlete. Depends on whether you'd be a competition coach or coach specialist. Generally, the competition coach is introducing athletes to competition. The competition coach specialist is then progressing with those athletes up to provincial, starting to compete national sort of levels. So there is a little bit of overlap from each type of coach. Students don't fall off the end when they finish one level of development. It's very fluid. So you've really got to find the context that ticks most of the boxes for you. If your athletes are in the learn to compete, train to compete, learn to win, train to win, or competitive for life, so really that competing nationally and beyond levels, then you should be certified as a High Performance 1 coach. So how do I get certified? The steps to certification include, there are several steps to getting certified, and we've organized these a little bit to help with the current situation. Right now it's difficult to get an evaluation to happen in quite a few places, so we've left that coaching evaluation to be the last step, and normally it is the last step on our coach training and education pathway. We've tried to organize this so that as we go through getting ready to get certified, there are many pieces that you can be ticking off now, and once we can get back to our regular activities everywhere, we'll be able to complete this process. So the first step in getting certified is to get trained. Training is not mandatory, it's recommended, and speaking personally as a coaching administrator, I would say it's highly recommended. As a coach, I would say it's highly recommended because anything we can do to improve our skill set makes us stronger coaches in the long run. There are several ways that a coach can get trained. So there are lots of opportunities for training that are offered in different environments, and I'm going to try and go through the different places that you can get training. There are multi-sport training courses offered through the Coach Association of Canada and their provincial territorial coaching representatives. So the Coaching Association of Canada certifies 66 different sport coaches. They offer several modules of training that are applicable to every coach, and then we have some sport-specific training that we offer as well. What you're seeing on the screen now are the pieces that are offered to every coach that through the multi-sport opportunities. So through the Coach Association of Ontario and Via Sport in BC and all of the PTCRs across the country under the Coach Association, you can take training for making ethical decisions, teaching and learning, et cetera, et cetera. As you look through the chart, there is training that's offered that's very specific to the evaluations and the outcomes that are expected of a coach at the different levels, instructor, competition coach, coach specialist, and high performance. Those trainings are not restricted. So if you are an instructor and you're interested in taking leading drug-free sport, you're more than welcome to. It isn't necessarily going to help you with an outcome on your specific certification pathway, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. So it's suggested that anybody coaching at the levels or wanting to be certified at the levels follow through the training that's ticked off in their column. These are all of the multi-sport courses that are offered. Several of the courses relate, or all of the courses relate directly to the outcomes that are expected during your evaluation. So we've got multi-sport courses offered through the PTCRs. If you go to coach.ca, the Coach Association of Canada website, and you want to see more information on each of those courses, if you go to Coaching Resources in the menu at the top, the little drop-down menu that pops up, the NCCP Multi-Sport Training Modules, if you click on that, you'll see a listing for all the different courses that are offered and a description of each course and the delivery options. So most CAC multi-sport courses are offered through classroom training and home study. They are working quickly to get as many offered through webinar as they can. I believe there's about 130 courses being offered over the next 2 months by the Coaching Association and the provincial territorial coaching representatives. So there are a lot of opportunities to engage in some multi-sport training modules without even leaving home right now, which is great. Then we've got EC, NCCP courses that are offered through EC and our provincial territorial sport organizations. So these are equestrian-specific training. There are multi-sport versions of this training, but they won't speak to you related to doing whatever the activity is in your sport. So we've got planning an equestrian lesson analyzing beginner performance, designing an equestrian sport program, and some analyzing performance through the higher levels. These courses we are working to move online as quickly as possible over the next, there was a plan over the next several years to move these online to be delivered as webinars. We are hoping to be offering planning an equestrian lesson, which includes emergency action planning, and design an equestrian sport program, which includes long-term equestrian development. In the next few weeks, we're planning for an early May delivery. Dates should be announced shortly as webinars, so you'll be able to engage and do those courses online. Those courses have outcomes that help you build the portfolio, which we'll look at in a few minutes for the respective coach certifications. So those are offered through EC and our PTSOs. In the next week or two, we're launching a campus, which will include sign-up and information for those courses. The other courses that you can be taking as a coach, there's 2 EC e-learning courses coming soon in the new EC campus that should come out in the next few days. EC Concussions and EC Fostering Healthy Equestrian Environments, which is our version of a safe sport training. Those will both be available to all coaches for free, and they will be e-learning, so asynchronous e-learning, which means you can log in and do them at your own speed, on your own schedule, without requiring a host, like in a webinar like we're doing right now. So look out for news about those, and you'll be able to get those done quickly. Additionally, there's a few NCCP e-learnings that you can do through the CAC Locker, and I will talk about where the Locker is in a minute. The additional pieces that coaches can be doing through the Locker include a sport nutrition course, which is great if anybody's focused on looking at what their athlete's nutrition needs are. It's human-related, not horse, so if you require horse nutrition information, we're going to have to look somewhere else for that. CAC Safe Sport, which is a new module that's just come out for coaches across the country. It is free, and it takes about 90 minutes, and it's an asynchronous e-learning. You can do it when you have time, and a record of it is saved so that they know you've completed it. The other e-learning that is offered for all coaches through CAC is Making Headway in Sport. Again, it's free, and it can be done at any time. So those are all of the training pieces that coaches can be doing, should be doing, and a copy of this presentation will be posted online afterwards, so you hopefully weren't frantically trying to write down all the pieces that relate to your certification. I will post it, and then everybody will be able to find the pieces that relate to their context. So the next piece you can be doing right now are online evaluations. All NCCP coach certifications are required to complete the NCCP Making Ethical Decisions online evaluation, which is located in the NCCP Locker, and I'll show you where that is in a second. The evaluation has to be done before you can get evaluated as a coach. It is one of the mandatory outcomes of being certified. Certification isn't valid until you've completed that online evaluation. It won't show in the Coach Association Locker as valid, and Equestrian Canada is not going to recognize it until that Making Ethical Decisions evaluation is completed. There is training through CAC and the provincial territorial coaching representatives. There's both webinar and classroom training and a home study training available for how to make the ethical decisions. There's a process that coaches are supposed to walk through to decide whether it's a legal or ethical situation and then make decisions based on their findings. Access to the evaluation is free if you've completed the training. If you haven't completed the training, you can challenge the evaluation for a fee. You get 2 chances at achieving a passing score. After that, you'll be forced to go back and do the training so that you can have a positive result. So I would encourage anybody to do the training if they feel they want that extra education at this time. So let's look at where you can do that. Every NCCP certified coach has an NCCP Locker account with the Coach Association of Canada. So if you go to the coach.ca website, at the very top on the right, you'll see a link called the Locker. The locker contains your transcript of coach training and evaluation activities, and some e-learning is hosted through the locker for coaches. You can set up a locker for yourself for free by going to thelocker.coach.ca, but if you've ever gone to any NCCP training, coached in any other sport, or gone to any EC or likely PTSO coaching clinic, you probably already have a locker account. So before you set up a new locker account, make sure you either contact coach.ca to look for your record. And I know I've done this in the past. Many of us have several locker accounts because we didn't realize they were created, and we've changed names, we've changed provinces. Sometimes it's worth it to make sure that all the pieces of things you've done show up on the same transcript so that you'll appear as certified if you're looking for that. So if you're interested in a locker account and you don't know if you have one, let one of us know, and we will look for you, or contact coach.ca and say, I've lost my password, I don't know what my account is. They'll need your name and your birth date. So you've done some training, you've done that one online evaluation that needs to be done by every coach. Now you can look at applying for coach certification. So to request an evaluation for certification, you have to hold a valid EC coach license. And the coach license is not available yet, but it's coming soon. For 2020, the coach license is not going to be mandatory because of the current situation. We're not sanctioning competition right now. Everybody's doing different things based on the pandemic. But changes are happening to our coaching program. We've been working hard on updating a lot of our coach materials, updating a lot of the training, updating the pathways. You're going to see changes coming over the next year to how the evaluation process works, whether it can be done more quickly, more easily, and hopefully more access to training. So once you get certified, you'll need an active EC coach license because a number of the prerequisites for certification are included under the coach license, like safe sport training. All of these things you can start to do without that coach license. You can let the provincial coaching coordinators know that you're interested in getting certified. They can help you find training. Our coach evaluations are managed some provincially and some nationally. So if you're getting certified as an instructor, a competition coach, or a competition coach specialist, your coaching portfolio and your evaluation is managed provincially. So you need to contact the coaching administrator for your provincial association. If you're not sure who that is, you can always email me, and I will direct you the right direction for your province. It is a national certification, but it's managed provincially. So once you're certified, that becomes a national record, and everybody across the country will recognize it. The management of your portfolio happens right now through your province. So the in-person evaluation will need to have a valid coach license. We'll look at what that means later in the presentation. If you've chosen one of these certifications as your goal, contact your coaching administrator in the PSO that you hold a membership with, and they'll help you find those training and evaluation opportunities. If you're looking at being certified as a High Performance 1 coach, that certification happens nationally. So you need to contact me, Helen Richardson at equestrian.ca, or coaching@equestrian.ca, and then I will help you work on all of the pieces required and point you in the right direction for training and evaluation for the High Performance 1 the certification. So once you've applied, and it's really important that you let the provincial coordinator or the national coordinator know you're interested, because a lot of training is organized based on the volume. So if we don't know there are people interested in a specific certification or a specific training, it's difficult to help answer those questions, provide the tools that you need. So the more we know, the more we're able to help. Let's look at portfolios. So some of the portfolio pieces coaches can be doing now. Every certification requires a portfolio submission. The contents of the submission vary by certificate. Many of the portfolio pieces are outcomes of the recommended training. So those big tables of training we looked at, all of those pieces will help you complete these portfolio pieces. So if you are applying to be an instructor, you'll need to write 2 lesson plans and do an emergency action plan for your home facility. If you're a competition coach, same thing. You'll be asked to write 2 lesson plans and an emergency action plan for your home facility. Competition coach specialists will write lesson plans, do an emergency action plan, do a yearly training plan for 1 athlete, create a program portfolio which includes an outline providing evidence of how administrative aspects and logistics of your coaching business are managed, and develop a report that shows evidence of success of your equestrian program. And those high-performance 1 coaches will have to submit a portfolio with lesson plans, an emergency action plan, yearly training plan, and a portfolio with a report providing evidence of how administrative aspects and logistics are managed. Develop a report that shows evidence of horse and equestrian progress throughout the program. Now, before you go running off and writing lesson plans and emergency action plans, you have to discuss this with the coaching administrator. So they can provide you with guidelines, templates, and training that can help you successfully complete the portfolio pieces. Some of the pieces are done once an evaluator is assigned, so they don't necessarily, it's not necessarily going to be done the same in every different location, so make sure you talk to that coaching administrator to find out exactly what they want and need. Once a portfolio has been submitted, it's reviewed by an EC NCCP coach evaluator before a practical evaluation is scheduled. An EC NCCP coach evaluator is a certified EC coach who has done NCCP coach evaluator training and been certified as an evaluator by a Multisport Coach Association of Canada Master Coach Developer. So those evaluators are specifically focusing on evaluating for the specific context that you're in, and they will work with you to get through the evaluation process. So once you've completed the portfolio, that will go to your coach evaluator, and they will evaluate that portfolio before a practical or in-person coaching evaluation is scheduled. Now we're on to the actual coaching evaluations. There's several steps for evaluation for every certification. Each evaluation includes an observable evaluation. So an evaluator watching you teaching lessons either in person or for some context through a video submission. The instructor candidate will have to demonstrate supporting athletes in training by teaching a group of 3 students at the English Rider 3 or 4 level or Western Rider 3 level or 1 competent driver in a mounted or driving lesson. They'll watch you teach an unmounted stable management lesson and a lunge lesson. They'll ask you to analyze performance of your beginner drivers or riders during the lessons, and they'll want to make sure that you can make ethical decisions. And these are very brief overviews. There are rubrics available for every level, so if you're interested in really looking at what you'll have to demonstrate, these are the very high-level topics of what's demonstrated in each of these evaluations. Competition coach candidates are demonstrating supporting athletes in training by teaching a group of 3 or 4 students at the English Rider 5 and 6 or Western Rider 4 level in 3 mounted lessons. Teaching a student to lunge, which I know if you've looked at the Competition Coach Western in the past, things might be changing a little bit. We're looking forward to what's being designed for these coach certification pathways in the future, so this needs to be confirmed with your evaluator and with the province that you're doing the evaluation through. They're also looking for you to be analyzing performance of beginner riders and making those ethical decisions. The coach specialist candidates demonstrating supporting athletes in training by teaching 1 student 3 mounted lessons, 4 for general performance, a lunge lesson, which is not applicable to the Western disciplines, and analyzing performance of more intermediate riders, and supporting that competitive experience. So for competition coach specialists, your lessons, you teach some lessons in practice. You will also have an evaluator present at a predetermined competition so they can evaluate your competition context. So you're pre-briefing and debriefing of an athlete. You're preparing them to compete, and then you're debriefing of that athlete after competition to prepare them for the next competition. They'll also be asking you to make ethical decisions. And competition coach specialist candidates bring their own student at the appropriate level to the evaluation. So this goes a bit with your portfolio. You've created a yearly training plan for an athlete, and now you're going to be bringing that athlete and teaching them lessons, and then teaching them in competition. And our High Performance 1 coach candidates are supporting athletes in training by teaching 3 mounted lessons, 4 for eventing candidates, because we can't forget cross country, analyzing performance of those development riders, supporting the competitive experience. So for our high performance coaches as well, there is an in-competition evaluation as well as the coaching evaluation and making ethical decisions. The High Performance 1 candidates can also bring their own student at the appropriate level for the evaluation. You can get more details about specific evaluation requirements by attending a PTSO evaluation prep clinic. Some of the provinces have been running them. It's a little tricky if we're not doing in-person groups right now, but it's something we're all looking at, how we can move those online as well. And you can request the evaluation rubric for your desired certification from those coaching administrators to help you prepare for the evaluation. So now you're probably thinking, well, I don't know if there's a certification for me. There's lots. We have 17 different certifications. So our instructors, there are 5 different streams of instructor certification offered by EC. The instructor of English flat, the instructor of English with jumping, an instructor Western, an instructor of drive, and the instructor of saddle seat. So depending on the style of riding that you're teaching, you may be more attracted to one of these instructor offerings than another. For competition coach, we have 2 different competition coach certifications offered by EC. Remember, these athletes are not necessarily focused on one discipline yet. They're still looking at a wide number of disciplines, maybe trying out 2 or 3 different things. So we've got our competition coach English and our competition coach Western. Introducing those athletes to competition. There are 6 different competition coach specialist certifications offered by EC. Those are the students who are starting to specialize and go to one specific type of competition and compete at that provincial, almost national level. So in the English disciplines, we have competition coach specialists in dressage, eventing, and jumping. You can do more than one certification, but you do need to complete all of the pieces for each. And in the Western disciplines, we have competition coach specialists in general performance, reining, and speed events. If you're looking at the high performance certification, there are 4 certifications right now offered by EC. In the English disciplines, we have that development coach, a high performance 1 for dressage, eventing, and jumping. And we have Western reining for our high performance Western coaches. I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm nearly out of breath. How does this apply to the coach license? The coach license is being introduced in 2020, but won't be required at EC-sanctioned competition until 2021, at least depending on what happens with this pandemic. The license includes many of the elements that are also required for certification, and it's a professional designation that shows that you've been trained, screened, and insured. And really, certification fits under that trained section of the license. And I'm sure you've heard in the past, certification will be a requirement of the license by 2025. It will fall under that training category. So to be trained, you need to have first aid training, safe sport training, concussion training, and then eventually being certified. To be screened for the license, you'll need to do an application form, 2 reference letters, a criminal record check, which for the first year needs to be a vulnerable sector check, and a screening disclosure form. The application form and the screening disclosure form are done during the registration process for the coach license, They don't have to be done separately. And we're aware that the criminal record check and first aid can't be done in most places right now because they are done in person, and that's not an option. So the license is not mandatory for anybody. It's an option if anybody's completed the requirements and wants to move to it. It's certainly not a requirement anytime soon. Really, by doing certification, by completing a lot of these pieces, you'll be ticking a lot of boxes towards it so that when we get to a time when you're interested in it, then you can move into it. The coach license also includes coaching insurance. So, you know who your students are. You know what level of certification works with the students you've got. Maybe you've found the certification that works for you. Maybe you've seen 2 or 3 different levels of certification that you're interested in. If you're not sure, reach out to one of us, either myself or one of the PTSOs that you're working with, and have that discussion and sort of narrow down what would work best for you right now and maybe where you want to progress to. If you feel like you're straddling the line between 1 or 2, then maybe starting with 1, and as your students develop, moving to the next would be appropriate. There are further prerequisites required for coaching experience, level of students, that sort of thing for the coach specialists in high performance. So those certifications, definitely you need to have a discussion to make sure you've got students in those levels that you can bring to those evaluations. Once the UC Campus launches in the next few days, you will find more information about certification and training opportunities, and you'll be able to track your certification or your progress on the certification pathway. So I'm hoping that we will be announcing that within the next week or 2, and you'll be able to go in and look at what you've already done and what you're going to be doing in the future. I will be posting this presentation online after the webinar. This webinar is running again tomorrow in French. And once both are completed, then we will be posting both versions of the webinar to share and for you to review. So I would encourage you to reach out to your provincial organization if you've got questions, and reach out to me if you're not sure who that is or you don't know if the questions are appropriate for them or for myself, and we will help you get started.